Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Real Talk NYC Real Estate Podcast with John and Jonathan. Mr. Conlon.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm
Good.
great.
What are we going to talk about today?
I've met a fantastic new couple through Real Talk, and they are in the process of beginning their search for a new home with me, which I'm honored about. But they also really would love to
they
buy.
Found us.
They found us, but they called me. All right. So they absolutely love the idea of renovating a home.
God bless them.
And I thought this is a perfect podcast topic to talk about the pros and cons of renovating and hopefully impart some very valuable information to my lovely first-time buyers. Yeah. And so I think that for as many reasons there are to buy a home, which is the quote-unquote diamond in the rough, it is incredibly important to have a buyer who is forewarned and really educated before they embark on the renovation. Because let me tell you, from renovating before a home outside the city, it is the number one reason for divorce. No, it could really cause serious havoc in a relationship.
It's not for the faint of heart. And
it's not for the faint of heart.
For us being those real estate advisors, we have to set people's expectations.
Absolutely.
And listen, it is a big undertaking.
It is.
So we try to be as open about it and as informative as we can, but there are really significant upsides to it as well. So it's if you have the stomach for it and the eye for it and the team in place to do it, it can be a very fun and fulfilling thing to do and very rewarding. So some of the things we're going to talk about today are some of the legal considerations and things to think about before you even jump in, and steps you got to take, budgeting and financing, the resale value, what sort of the outcome financially it looks like, and then also putting together the team, which is a much needed piece, which depends on how much you're doing, et cetera. But
right. In terms of the legal considerations, and when we talk about the legal considerations, we're also talking about the overall time frame of everything, and the red tape involved, so to speak, in terms of actually accomplishing what one wants to do in a renovation. So if you're buying particularly in a cooperative, which is you've got to apply to the board and get all of your ducks in a row in order to basically close. So we're looking on the short end of things, around 60 days to close. Then buyers sometimes can think automatically upon owning the apartment that they can just go in and start, hammering away. And that is not the case. So what we will do is, if there is that lag time between contract signed to closing, we will then work with the buyers to be able to bring their quote unquote team of people in to be able to assess the situation, get quotes, get their ducks aligned in terms of an alteration agreement for their work, the scope of their work, so that upon closing, they're able to submit their plans to the cooperative board, because the co-op attorney or the co-op architect, the building architect, the attorneys, everyone must review that alteration agreement.
Depending on what's being done.
That is correct, the scope of work. Now, if they are looking to do a minor amount of renovation, sanding of floors and painting, that is excluded. But what we're talking about are more in lines of doing bathrooms, kitchens, electrical work.
Especially if you're trying to move stuff around in the apartment, wet stuff in particular, kitchens and bathrooms, you want to expand the footprint or move a kitchen a bit.
Right. You
gets
have
complicated.
Permitting and building approvals through the DOB, and the scope of work needs to be approved. All of that takes time. Yeah. So you are talking on the low end of things, I would say a couple of months. And sometimes regarding these building permits, it could be 3-4 months before you're even ready to begin your work. Yeah. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it of course, the scope of work matters, but we're thinking more along the lines of doing a full-blown
renovation.
You're going down to the studs, so to speak. You're doing electrical. Maybe you got to bring extra electrical up to the apartment to accommodate things like central AC or other electrical components, et cetera, that you want to add to the apartment. Absolutely. And the one tricky thing here is that you can't submit the plans to the condo or the co-op
until you close. That's
so,
right.
And that adds, the co-op adds another layer there, because people even have, because there's always that little birdie on the shoulder that you might get rejected by the board. People don't want to devote a lot of time and energy and and hope into what are we going to do with the renovation until they know that they have it. So sometimes that stands in the way so that people can't. I mean, for years and years, we were telling clients, listen, what you want to do in order to truncate the time is submit that application for renovation the day you close, because closings are typically in the managing agent's office for a co-op, but then drop it off for a condo. 5 or 6 years ago, where I would tell all of my clients, like, this is what you want to do, but let me tell you, nobody that we've ever worked with has ever done it.
And then they call and say, oh my God, it's so long. We haven't even started our renovation
remember
yet.
We talked about that. But then I had one of our clients that bought on the Upper West Side with us, and he did it. And he was so happy that he was the one to get it to be the first one of our clients that actually turned in the application to do the renovation right after.
That's great.
Now I had a second person do it, and I know you have.
Yeah,
so
I've had people
that
do
is
it.
the goal, but it is hard just psychologically in a co-op to like devote all this time and energy to doing plans, especially in a bigger renovation, and hiring an architect, and like there's a lot of money involved in that, with the thought that there's always that little thought of the board rejection. So totally understood.
Okay, so we've talked about there's delays there.
Yeah.
Okay,
and there's some things that could go into timing that can delay things, like asbestos,
like COVID,
or COVID.
That was nonsense. That's I'm just kidding around, but asbestos, sure.
Yep, asbestos. Some people have
Some are work
sensitivities
rules.
around lead paint. Some are work rules, which means that, just to clarify what that means, is summer work rules. A lot of these, especially in the Park to Fifth Avenue corridor, there will be buildings that say you can only do your heavy, loud construction stuff during the summer months when most people are away, Memorial Day to Labor Day loosely. So those feel like they're a lot fewer and farther between now. I think a lot of buildings have loosened up on that.
And now, how about money?
Budgeting and financing. So it's important to have a very detailed budget when you go into these things, but it's also very important to know and to realize and be okay with there are going to be surprises. Some of these, especially when you get to the pre-war buildings and you start opening up walls and you start maybe peeking behind the curtain that hasn't been looked behind for decades, and there's an issue that really needs to be resolved. So there's one thing, which is stepping into or discovering something that really has to be addressed functionally or by code or whatever. And then the other piece of it, which is the old snowball effect of, okay, well, we were going to just do this, but if we're going to do this, we really should do that, because it will really look weird if we have this brand new and that 40 years old. And also just aesthetically, people like get into, oh, we forgot that, the baseboards are not great, so maybe it makes sense to just tear those off and put on new baseboards. Yeah, it probably does if they look like they've been caked on. You don't want that one thing. It becomes the focal point then when you have it, when you sell it, when you have people come look at it. So both of those things will automatically, cost you money. Everything costs money here, and a lot of it. So always go into, I think they say 25 to 50% overages, but it all just depends on how well you've planned things out
Without
and the
a doubt.
team you have in place.
That's right. So there are no surprises, because a $100,000 budget could easily become a $200,000 to $250,000 budget if you're naive, as you're saying, because a team could easily say, well, if you're doing this, you may want to consider doing this. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And then it's another $10,000, $15,000 later. One must have and be disciplined in terms of a level of budget. How much can you afford to spend, and then prioritize what needs to be done in the home. It's one thing to have carte blanche on a open budget where you say, okay, no, we're going to gut it, studs, and $1 million to $2 million renovation. But on a first-time buyer who's coming to with quote unquote good bones of an apartment, and I think that our jobs as their trusted advisor to guide them on our expertise. Well, when I started selling real estate in 1999. You know what we said? Renovating is
$10,000 a bathroom?
No, $100 a foot. $100 per square foot to do a renovation. I was selling raw loft space in Tribeca.
Right.
$100 a foot gets me my foot.
Yeah,
you know. So
yeah.
now it's on average around $500 a square foot. If you can do it under that, which you can, $300 a square foot. But you know,
depends on what level of finish you want.
Depends on the level of finish that you want, and so you must be mindful of that. So again, assembling the right team to meet your budget is another thing, because you may have, let's say, a $200,000 budget, and the team that you're using, they're going to want to spend about $400,000 on your renovation. So there's always that discrepancy. Be disciplined and be clear on what it is that you have to spend.
Yeah, most of these contractors that are really good here in the city, they give you a very clear breakdown of, this is what we're going to do. Here's the associated cost. Yes, the sort of a menu of, and then you can pick and choose what makes sense if you are running into budgetary constraints. It is always tricky, and they're you know, the price. Let's put it this way: the renovation cost never goes down.
Never goes down.
It's kind of like your maintenance and your common charges. They never go down.
Exactly.
So there are some other costs that are out there that, one in particular that we wanted to mention, which is the daily cost. So some of these buildings, maybe they don't limit you to summer work rules where you have to be Memorial to Labor Day, but they'll say you have 6 months to do the renovation. And it doesn't mean that they're going to stop you at 6 months. But what that typically means is that they're going to start charging you either a daily or a weekly charge for every day or week you go over. And that can be an exorbitant cost. I mean, it can end up being a $10,000 bill every month to go on. I've seen $500 a day. I've seen $5,000 a week, you know, so it can climb very quickly. So being very cognizant of timing and such, maybe you hold off to actually let the hammer start hitting the wall until you really have a really good plan in place and you have the kitchen cabinets already in storage. You've got like everything ready to go in, because even though holding it costs you more in the carrying costs for that time period, it's going to pale in comparison to if you go over the time limit that the co-op or condo puts, mostly co-ops who see this sort of additional charge, but it will certainly pale in comparison to those charges typically.
Correct. So the moral of the story is know the overall costs, all the costs involved,
and timing. Yeah,
and timing.
If they're time sensitive costs, you know. So the other thing to talk about is, where do you spend your money? You know, let's just say it's not a full gut. Maybe you can salvage certain pieces of the apartment. You know, flipping apartments here in the city is not a thing. Transaction costs are too high. Construction costs are too high. So we don't want anybody listening to this to think, oh, I'm going to spend $50,000 or $100,000 on my kitchen and I'm going to get, you know, $100,000 or $150,000 value out of that. What we usually tell people is it helps with the liquidity of the asset. So it'll help it sell, because renovated apartments always sell quicker than unrenovated apartments. And usually at higher prices, but not a factor or an X factor above what they put into it. So where they want to spend money are either, I always talk to my clients, my buyers, about if you can increase the functionality of the space. So if you can add a half bathroom, like a powder room, that's always a good increase. You know, if you have bathrooms only en suite to bedrooms, and you can add a half bath. We had that in a recent apartment. It's a big value adder. If you open the kitchen, which is much more desirable these days for most people, is opening the kitchen to the dining space, increasing the flow and the layout of the apartment, even if it's just moving some closets around and stuff, just so it aesthetically appears much nicer, but also functions much better. You get better storage and such. Doing kitchens and bathrooms is always usually the place that people start, and then stuff trickles down from there. We're going to do this,
and then
we're going to do that.
Washers and dryers and air conditioning. Yeah. Those are big value adders.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you can get away, especially if you have window AC units, do whatever you can to get away from those things.
Pull them into the P-tax through the wall air conditioning.
Or central
air conditioning if the building will permit it.
And the washer dryer, which is not an easy, it's not a cheap fix.
It's not a cheap fix, but it's also not it's not allowed in many buildings, the older buildings. You just got to be kind of cherry pick.
And I just priced one out for clients that bought in the Upper West Side, and they bought a very sizable 1-bedroom with us. Clients that have been with us forever. We priced out adding just a washer dryer does not exist. Space does not exist. We had to build out a closet and kind of take some of the space out of the bathroom. And it was going to cost $15,000 to $20,000 to just get the washer dryer in there. Yeah. So it's not like you're only, I'm buying a, $3,000 or $4,000 unit and putting it there in a pan. No, you gotta get through all the waterproofing and the safety things, et cetera. You get the approval of the building. You've got to file things. It's much more involved in that. So, but going from an apartment without a washer dryer in it to an apartment with, huge value add.
Huge. And then the same thing with the air conditioning. Central air conditioning can run you a minimum of $100,000, $100,000 to get it
on a good sized apartment. Yeah,
on a good sized apartment, and then you between all the permitting and the ducting and everything that goes involved in the central air conditioning. That's a huge feat versus the P-tax, which are going to be less expensive.
Yeah,
nevertheless,
they're going to be $5,000 to $7,000.
I would say
each,
probably seven to eight.
Maybe seven to eight if you have to. Yeah, if the sleeve's not there,
that's
getting
correct.
through
you
the brick
through
and
the
everything
wall.
else.
But for all intents and purposes,
I used to say
10.
4 to 5.
Me too, but
and
let's
now
say
it's like
even
7 to 10.
7 to 10,000 is a good range.
And of course,
for the
there's
buyers.
a big range in the P-tax in the unit itself. Like you can buy one of those for $2,500 or $5,000. So there's a range there, and that depends on where you're going with it, where the height of the windows are, et cetera. And the AC is a very important piece, like especially if it's a central AC, but you really want to get the HVAC guy person in there to give you a very detailed, because it so much depends on the layout of the apartment, the ceiling heights, et cetera, because there are a number of different options there that may be open to you depending on the building's policies that one way could save you a good amount of money. And frankly, P-tax have come a long ways. Those are the typical ones. They're heat and AC that go under the windows, just to clarify. We talk about these things as if everybody knows right out of the gates, but those are what you many times see here in the city. And there's benefits to having those as well. If they break, it's just the one unit. They can have each one of them on a separate thermostat. It's come a long ways from what they used to be. Yeah. So there are other options.
Definitely
perhaps
much more cost efficient than cost effective to doing central. Yes.
So we've talked a lot about things that you would want to add, value adders. But then we go to the flip side. Like, what are some of the things that we would advise against?
The number one thing that I would say is to advise against is going in the direction of fads or bright red marble in the kitchen, these ostentatious ideas in terms of what they think looks great in a bathroom, and you have everything with black marble and mirrors. That's not going to sell well. We always say, we'll use the expression, not to offend anybody, but bamboo floors, or like a certain type of a trending kind of a fixture in an apartment. Hey, it's nice to personalize the apartment, but the more vanilla, the more classic, the more elegant one can be in a renovation, the more power you're going to get in the apartment. But when you start really being specific and ostentatious in design, that is going to limit you when you go to sell the apartment.
Yeah. We all, listen, now the gray palette is very appealing for most. We went through a period where the brown palette was more, so brown cabinets or white, all just white.
White, yes. You have to take your shoes off just to walk in the front door.
Yeah, but the bamboo floors, I remember those were in style for like 6 months. And then
or longer in the early 2000s. They were the thing.
It felt like they just feel dated, very quickly. So there are elements that come in and out of style very quickly. Take guidance from your real estate agents, take guidance from the architect or designer to a limit. Like you don't want to go crazy, like you said, ostentatious sort of things, because think of the general appeal. And I know some people walk in and they say, well, I'm going to be here forever, so I'm going to do what I want to do. Okay, but there's always limits to that. So it is just that it should at least be a discussion. And listen, much like when we talk to buyers about, oh, well, this has a spiral staircase, and that's going to really limit your buyer pool when you go to sell it for you, when we go to sell it for you down the road, whenever that may be, because we're going to be working still. As long as they go into it with eyes open, knowing that that's going to be the problem when that time comes. Okay, I mean, we're not here to tell you don't do this. We're here to say, if you do this, this is one of the repercussions. Is that so? We're not saying that it's the worst thing you could do. Listen, you have plenty of money. You want to do exactly what you want to do it. But if you do it, there is going to be a real risk there that when you go to sell it, the fads will change, and there's just going to be less people that are interested in taking on your style.
Two things that you said, very important. Buyers who say, I'm going to live there forever. I'm going to do what I want. Yeah. Life changes. Yeah. We met people who designed the most specific apartment we had ever seen in our entire life, and it is Moroccan themed, and now they're trying to sell it because of something happened in their lives with COVID. Hey, look, you got to find that one buyer that wants to live in Marrakesh. And the last thing that I would say is, if you accomplish that beautiful renovation that you set your mind out to, classic, elegant, maintain the apartment. We have been blessed with clients who have bought an apartment and who have lived in the apartment for 5, 7, even 10 years. And we walk back into the apartment and it's as though they just renovated the apartment. They've maintained it beautifully. Maintain the apartment. Don't let the apartment slide where it's like, okay, well, we have to do a redo before you list the apartment. That's one bit of advice that I would give. Maintain it.
Yeah, and the only other piece that I would add to that is if it's something that you're thinking about doing that you'd really like to do, and it does fit in budget and it does fit in timing, do it before you move in.
Oh, definitely.
Because you would be surprised, audience, if almost, it feels like half the apartments that we go in and sellers that we meet, and they're like, oh yeah, when I bought it 20 years ago, I wanted to do that. And then I moved in and life got in the way.
And they never did it.
That
includes like a kitchen with a running sink.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've had some interesting ones. But,
we did.
But yeah, definitely do it if you can, if it fits into your time and your budget. We always advise, listen, especially when it comes down to the main things like a kitchen or a bathroom, like do it before you get in there. Floors for certain, because floors, those are one of the things that it's a real pain to do it once you're moved in, and it's an easy thing to do. Painting, and listen, the last point I would make on that is if you want to paint your whole apartment bright, crazy colors, go for it. That's temporary. You can always paint it very simply before you list it. But just know that that's what you're going to have to do.
Understood.
But that's easy. Don't put orange tile in the kitchen.
Don't
do it.
Don't do it.
Just say no.
Okay.
All right. The last piece.
Finding the right team.
So teams to take on these sorts of renovations, again, we're talking about big gut renovations, come in all different shapes and sizes. You have teams of people that say they're an architect, designer, and GC, a general contractor that will manage everything. So that's like an all-in-one, one-stop shop. We're going to take care of everything for you. Then you can go to like a GC or a contractor that's the people that are going to actually do the work. And maybe they have an architect that they have to just sign off on plans if the plans need to be done. If you're going to be renovating an apartment where you're changing walls and numbers of rooms and opening, wet areas into different areas and such, you're going to need an architect. And you want to have a good vibe with that architect, and you want to be able to talk through your ideas with them and get good feedback. So trying to piecemeal the team together is a challenge. So if you can get to the all-in-one, it is going to be more expensive typically. but it can save you a lot of grief at the end of the day. And there is some minimizing of risk because everything's being done in-house, so to speak. So everybody knows how everybody works. Everybody is pushing in the same direction. They all can talk behind the scenes. They all know how temperaments are and personalities are and tastes and such. We have had a number of people that have had hired a contractor and then separately an architect, and they end up bickering, or a designer, and they end up, and you should not have to act as the moderator between people that you're hiring to do the work. Correct. So
you bring up a good point. And also when interviewing designers, architects, a lot of questions have to be asked, but also the cheapest is not necessarily the best. Okay. And so I couldn't agree with you more. We have a client right now working, and this is the last piece of the puzzle. I would say, well, yes, we are resources in terms of being able to provide vendors to the clients, but the respective building may have design teams or architects or contractors who have worked in the building before. That can save a tremendous amount of red tape. And interview the contractors. We work in some really fine buildings on the Upper East Side or Upper West Side and downtown, and go to the heart. Go to the heart of the building. Yeah, at the especially end of the super.
Yeah, if the super has somebody, the resident manager is a great resource to go to and say, have you had contractors in the building that have done a really good job and you've seen their work? Most of these resident managers or supers have some construction background.
Without a doubt.
And they're there peeking in on these renovations constantly because they're protecting the building. Correct. And if they have somebody not only that's following all the rules, et cetera, but also they have a rapport with already, it is invaluable when it comes to these big renovations. Yes, but especially if it's your first time out, we always say, go to the building, ask the super.
Definitely. So I hope that we've given the audience some tools, some information that's going to be relevant if they are considering a renovation. I want to thank my new clients for bringing the idea to the table. We're here to, answer any further questions.
Yeah, as is in all the topics we talk about in real estate. There's lots of ins and outs and different caveats and nuances and such. So if you have further questions, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you about it. And
for now,
in the meantime, be safe, be healthy, and
remain in gratitude.
Most importantly,
remain in
gratitude.
See you next time.
Thanks for watching or listening to the Real Talk NYC Real Estate Podcast. If you want to find us online or sign up to get our monthly and quarterly market stats, come on over to our website, GasdaskaConlonTeam.com, or you can find us on all social media with the handle @Gasdaska Conlon Team. If this show was helpful, entertaining, or informative, consider telling friends and family or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss our next episode, and we'll see you next time.